class recently relates to something you're doing in the real world, whether it's something you saw in the news or some math formula that you applied when you were at the grocery store, or something that they taught you connected with something in your real world, teachers love that because they know you're thinking about their topic outside of class. And oftentimes, clues for how to come up with those kinds of comments to your teachers when they're talking about something in class, it reminds you of something else outside of class, jotted in the column of your paper, and remember the next time you see them, you can pull that out and tell it to them. So the kids go, oh, I didn't, I thought my friends will tease me if I talk to my teacher, or it looks like I'm kissing up, or this or that, and I just say, you need to just kind of let that go, and continue to build that relationship. Teachers will be your best advocates. They want you to succeed. They're doing this job not for the money, they're doing this job because they love their subject, and when everyone in the class isn't doing well, teachers start to wonder where the disconnect is coming from. So just know that teachers are people too, and for parents, the extension to this is when your child gets a bad grade, when your child has an issue with a teacher, please, please, please don't rush to pick up the phone and send an email on behalf of your child. Sit with your child, talk it through, role play, practice what your child can say to be their own advocate. They have to learn in high school how to approach their teachers and dig their way out of situations or work through situations. Obviously, if it's something that's extreme, do get involved. You know what those issues could be. But if it's something as simple as a few bad grades, which are a few, your child needs that face time, and they need to be the one first to step in, talk to the teacher about what do I need to do differently, what's going on here. Do I need extra help from an upperclassman, or can I meet with you extra, or do you recommend I get a tutor? Do understand that they need to be their own advocate now and begin to learn those skills. Because if you don't give them to them now, then at the next stage, are you going to be emailing their college professors? It just doesn't make any sense. This is the place they have to learn it, to do it. I tell students, and this is kind of the scary part, so we can look at this Naviance, which is a great computerized tool that kind of helps kids get started and get all the juices flowing and get all the ideas out there. But college admissions is a human process. It involves, people just like me who are reading your kids' applications and visiting schools and reaching out. But I do tell this to kids, and this is something that parents and your college counselor, is probably telling you as well, that the transcript, the actual piece of paper that has now it's electronic, but the transcript, which is just the, pulled together of all of their grades from 9th grade through 12th grade, the report cards, just in grade form, is really the most important document in the college application. I think every college will agree. It just demonstrates the kind of student in the classroom that your child is. And it demonstrates, when colleges look at these transcripts, they look at three things. They take the transcript and they do something called kind of just a transcript analysis, where they look at your child within the context of their own school. How did Johnny perform with his school? What kinds of classes did he choose to take? Did he push himself in areas that he felt stronger in? Did he just take a regular college prep track? What was his grade range, etc. So they look at your child in the context of their own school. Then they look at something called grade patterns. Grade patterns are just comparing first semester to second semester of each year of each class. So semester 1 of freshman English was an A, semester 2 was a B. Semester 1 of history was a B, semester 2 was an A. And they look at these patterns of how kids either improve, stay the same, or fall down. And what I kind of think a good thing for you to do as parents is, once you look at those first semester grades that your child has earned, to try to set goals for, okay, wow, you've got 3 A's and 2 B's. Do you think you can keep those A's in those 3 classes? That would be great. Do you think these B's will stay B's, or do you think there's something we can do to help you bring those up? Do you think there's a risk that one of these A's you're teetering, so it could maybe go down to a B plus or B? And you have this conversation, and maybe even with their college counselor, to understand what that second semester could bring, and setting some goals for second semester, because school is cumulative, and so teachers, as the year progresses, things do get harder. Kids get more skills, they get more knowledge, they get an understanding of what's expected of them, and usually by March or April they start to think about summer and the sunshine, and I always say to them, it's kind of like competing in a race. The last couple miles, or the last mile, is the toughest, so you really have to finish strong and know that Teachers would also like it to be summer too, but you've got to kind of hang in there till the end of the year and kind of give it your all and do the best job that you can. And these grade patterns, if there's a constant pattern where first semester's great and then everything goes down second semester each year, there's some questions involved on why is that happening, and if kids can maintain where they are or kind of move in an upward trend, that's always kind of a better thing to shoot for. The third piece they look at is something called grade trends. So they look at the entire freshman year, they compare it to the entire sophomore year, they compare it to the entire junior year, and they see sort of the progress the student has made through the classes they've chosen, through the, through the success or not success that they've had in the classroom. And I always just say, if you can encourage your kids to take the hardest classes they're capable of taking and surviving, and pushing themselves in the courses that come easier to them, which tend to also be the courses that they like more, that's just a good kind of rule of thumb. Just push yourself in the areas that you enjoy, stretch a little bit further in the things that do come easier to you, because if that's your academic passion, kids know and you know what classes those are. They're the ones that they get excited, oh my gosh, it's English, I'm so excited, and they're pumped up because of the teacher, because of the content, because of the book they read, or they are on their way to math and they are already looking at their watch before class starts. So English for that kid should be the course, the coursework that they're kind of continuing to press a little harder, and math they might want to just take the college prep courses in that order. So capable of taking and surviving, people say, well, what does that mean? I say kind of the rule of thumb would be if your student has an option to take an AP or honor in a particular course, and there's a risk that they might get a C in that, then I would say if they can get an A or a B, and it's hard to know, how do you know ahead of time, and we'll get to how you find out the answers to those questions, but it's kind of a rule of thumb. I would say I'd probably rather see a kid with an A or a B in a regular track course than with a C in an honors or an AP. But it's just hard to know, so you have to kind of gauge it as it's going. Also talk to their teachers, encourage your child to talk to the teacher of the next grade so that they can get a sense of, where would they place the student, talk to their current teacher, talk to upperclassmen who've taken the courses to get a sense of, how the class works and what their chances might be. And I always tell students, ask 10 or 12 students the same question, because in those 10 answers, you will find your answer, and ask kids that are like you academically. If you ask the brainiac, is honors biology hard? Their answer's going to obviously be, no, it's totally easy, and you should do it. And then you ask a kid that might be average in science, and they'll say, oh my God, it's awful because you have to do 3 extra projects and this and that, and there's homework every day instead of 3 days a week. Whatever it is, you'll find the answer that kind of works for you, and you'll hear kind of probably repetition from kids that are similar to you academically. Okay, the next parent tip. This one's kind of more just a social one, but you only get one chance to make a first impression. In high school, your child is kind of waking up every morning different. I mean, they are sort of changing every day, growing and emotional and enthusiastic or not enthusiastic, talkative, not talkative. And it goes back to the quote of the adolescence quote from the beginning, which is, I kind of let kids know that, you're allowed to reinvent yourself daily in high school. You kind of do without realizing it. So if you turn into a mean girl or a mean guy, or if you do something that you regret, or you do something that you don't think is very nice to someone else, it's actually okay the next day to tell them you're sorry and to start fresh. These kids do need to kind of give each other a break. They're all working pretty hard. They're all in it together. And the ways that we as parents want to try to sort of hopefully move into a direction of just being more of a supportive network. The same kind of goes for kids. A lot of them, unfortunately, believe that they're competing with all of their classmates for these few spots or whatever it might be, and that is why I think teachers who do a lot of team activities and a lot of class projects that involve groups are trying to kind of help diffuse that and keep a situation where there's a little less competition and a little more working together. So on the social standpoint, for women and especially girls of moms, if you've not seen the Mean Girls movie together, watch it this weekend. A great book, Queen Bees and Wannabes, is what the Mean Girls was made from, but there's also a book, Queen Bee Moms and Kingpin Dads, that Rachel Wiseman wrote, who is wonderful. She's spoken in the past in Orange County, and the concept of her book, which I would recommend, is how should parents behave with the coaches, teachers, and other adult figures in the lives of their children. When, as a parent, have we crossed the line to be too involved or too vocal or too demanding of the other adult that's either the volunteer coach for your kid or the school coach for your kid or the parent volunteer at the PTO, whatever it might be. It's sort of knowing what your behavior should be and when it's crossing the line. And a lot of us don't know when we're crossing the line and can alienate ourselves and do things that are harmful to our kids without even knowing it, with our best interests in mind. As if we're their advocate, we're actually causing damage. So I would encourage parents to take a look at that book, Queen Bee Moms and Kingpin Dads. It came out, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. I do encourage kids to get friendly with upperclassmen, just as I encourage kids to do that. I encourage parents, find other parents with kids that are older. They're your best resource. Find a bunch of them. Don't be shy about asking. And be the carpool mom whenever you can. Really offer to carpool and turn off your music and keep your mouth shut and just listen. Yeah. Because I just learned so much about my kids and their friends. And if you're not the carpool mom, get friendly with the carpool mom and ask her what she's hearing. I'm so sorry I'm not looking over here. I don't even need to have you guys see my profile. Hi everyone. See, it's not the first 3 rows, so I don't need to avoid you. Okay, so anyway, so getting friendly with moms of upperclassmen who have been around the block and can offer you advice, and definitely try and be the carpool parent when you can. I encourage kids to be joiners or leaders. It doesn't matter which. You know if your child has something that they're passionate about that they might become a leader in, or work their way up to becoming a leader. You also encourage your kids to join a club. The biggest mistake they can make in joining any organization is when you ask them the question, so what did you guys do in the Spanish club? And they say, well, we just kind of talked about stuff. And, well, what would you guys exactly do? I don't know, it's kind of a lame club. We don't really do very much. We just kind of have lunch on Thursdays and try to speak Spanish, but nobody does. And then you think, well, is that a good use of that hour of time to be in that Spanish club, or are they doing other things? Well, yeah, they're doing a drive to send toys to kids in Guatemala. Oh, well, are you involved in that drive at all, or is it something I can help you with, or we can maybe make flyers or send out emails? I mean, if you're a joiner of a club, you have to be a worker bee. You have to be doing something in the club other than just showing up to the meeting. So as parents, encouraging your kids to brainstorm clubs that they either would want to start their own, because I always say the greatest thing about starting your own club is guess who the president is, right? And then guess who's the vice president? It's usually your best friend or someone you want to hang out with. So, and you find a teacher that you like to be your sponsor, and that's, you begin your club and create. So I sort of have 2 stories about students I worked with years ago. Actually, this one is funny. This one is a Laguna Beach High School boy. Years ago, he's like an architect now, so he's out of college and everything. But he was a soccer player, and if anyone's heard me speak before, you might have heard this story, but I have to repeat it because it's just one of my favorites. So he was on the bus home from a soccer game, an away game. And that was back in the days before kids all put their earbuds in and stopped talking to each other on the bus and, dialed into their electronics. It was actually when kids were throwing paper airplanes and bored and singing songs and kind of just passing time. They couldn't really do their homework and they were on the bouncy bus home. So he was bored, didn't have a cell phone at the time, and he turned to the boy next to him who had a backpack that had a key ring hooked to it that had an Etch-a-Sketch, a little tiny, like the 2-inch version of that old-fashioned game with the white knobs that you draw pictures on, and hopefully most of you know what I'm talking about. Kids nowadays know it from Toy Story, but I grew up with Etch-a-Sketch, and anyway, so the guy next to him had an Etch-a-Sketch. He was bored. He said, hey, can I play with your key ring? And the kid's like, sure. He unhooked it. And for the next hour, this high school junior was obsessed with this little Etch-a-Sketch, and he was so into it that he got home and he dug into his younger brother's closet up high and found his old Etch-a-Sketch that had been, moved down to his younger brother's room, and started playing with it and was kind of obsessed with Etch-a-Sketch. He brought it to school the next day, and at lunch, he was, playing with it, took it out of his backpack, and a few of the other soccer team boys started teasing him. They're like, dude, what's up with the kids game? And he's like, oh, it's so awesome. I kind of rediscovered it on the bus ride home yesterday. Check it out. And a couple other soccer guys started playing with it. And then the next day, 2 other guys found their younger sisters and brought theirs to school. And we're like, oh my God, look, you can make a circle this way. And then if you turn it this way, it does. I mean, it was kind of a random thing. But this is about the time that I was working with him. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting that you're interested in Etch-a-Sketch. What about starting the Etch-a-Sketch club? And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy and said, well, what do you mean the Etch-a-Sketch Club? And so we kind of mapped out, which any parent could do, you don't need to be a college counselor to do it, a way to come up with a way to turn something kind of light and fun that he enjoyed into a club, because a club should be fun, it should be enjoyable. And so he got a bunch of kids, he sent out, whatever, made phone, I think it was a phone tree back then, he might not have even sent out emails, and got a couple kids to bring them. They decided Thursday would be Etch-a-Sketch Club Day, and they would just start it as, see how many people would show up at lunch with the Etch-a-Sketch, and they would all hang out in this one area, have lunch together, and do their Etch-a-Sketches. So a couple girls started coming, it started getting kind of popular, and before he knew it, he had like a list of kids that wanted to be in this club, and then, well, what are we going to do with the club other than play at recess, play at lunch? So they got a teacher to sponsor it, and it was actually an art teacher, which I thought was a good choice because of the artistic piece of it. And they decided to do a fundraiser, and they wrote to Hasbro, and they got Hasbro to donate Etch-a-Sketches to an underserved school, and they went into the school and delivered them to the kids, and they sort of made it into this kind of neat club, which shows me actually why he did become an architect later. And he did write a really interesting college essay about the experience. But that being said, he took a really light kind of thing and turned it into something that was a club, and it was different, certainly. I don't think it was the reason he got into college, that was that he founded the Etch-a-Sketch Club. But I can tell you that it was a pleasurable experience. It shouldn't be a drag to be spending time at these activities. And as a parent, the other piece to the being a joiner or being a leader is, if your kids are, how many of you have kids involved in sports? Okay. So anyone who's a coach, including my husband, should probably plug their ears. But my big secret for these kids, and as parents, this is something we really can help when you're in the be a joiner or be a leader situation, is if you're on a sports team, we all know how much time that takes out of our calendar and their calendar and the weekends and the summers now with getting ready for the team, etc. So I tell parents and kids, if you want to find a way to find time, which seems to be the hardest thing to do, is how do we get back lost hours? It would be this. If your child has practice Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 or whatever, 2.5 hours, whatever it might be, if you can identify with your child one day, one practice day, that your child would miss, it will not harm their future for college or for even athletic scholarships or anything of that nature, because your child can approach the coach and say, I'm really sorry, on Wednesdays I'm working with a tutor on this particular class, and my parents need me to get that grade back up before I can, come every day. I need to, that's the time that the tutor is scheduled. Or I have a part-time job, and these are the hours that they need me on this day. Or I have a community service that requires me to be at this particular location on this particular day. And the coach will go crazy and say, well, I'm sorry, then you're not going to start, and if you're not at practice every day, you're going to be sitting on the bench, and da-da-da-da-da, and your child will feel like, oh my gosh, kind of scared. But as parents, you can certainly back your child and know that if there's one less day that your child is not at practice, and they're still working really hard on the other 4 days, and if they're good, they're going to get played. Even if they're not good, they're going to get some playing time. And that one day of that 2 or 3 hours that you can help them find, and this maybe would even apply for another activity, not just sports, but an activity that your child is devoting a lot of time to, finding that one day of 2 or 3 hours can make the difference between kind of sanity and insanity for your child. And it's a gift. And it's how they use that 2 or 3 hours, knowing that, okay, I'm not at practice, so what am I going to do with this time? Am I going to be able to get ahead on this? Am I going to be able to get an hour of sleep, maybe have a nap? Am I going to be able to actually meet with that tutor that I didn't have time to meet with, or get together with another student? Am I going to have an hour to sit down with my mom or dad and have a conversation that's real, or with my siblings? Am I going to be able to go participate in something else that uses that time efficiently, and it's just taking one afternoon away from the very heavy activity that they might have? In the whole scheme of life, in the whole scheme of it, it's not going to make a huge difference. So a lot of people go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that about coaches. The coaches are going to hate you, and da-da-da-da-da. And I just sort of believe that as being your child's advocate and helping them find that lost time, it's easy to just pick one. And if you have the reason be because it's academic, I've got to do better. Coaches need kids to do well in class and in school. Nobody's going to say don't do well in school. And also a lot of times just to even stay on the team, you need to keep certain GPAs and things. So I think that it will be a shock for that person at the beginning, and your child will feel like, oh my gosh, you ruined my life. And then suddenly that's the day that they got back. They found back 2 or 3 hours of time. Okay. The next step would be getting a job. So we live in zip codes that imply that our kids are entitled, indulged, and given everything to. We've had reality shows focus on our region of the country, and they don't make our kids look very good. And we know that not all our kids are like the kids in the reality shows. However, because the perception of where we live, regardless of what your personal family's financial situation is, but because of the perception of where we live is that we have kids that kind of get everything that they want and need, I believe every child in the course of high school needs to have a job. Doesn't have to be during the school year. It can be in the summer. Could be on a Sunday morning. It could be any time that they could fit it in. It could be working over some of the school breaks. Whatever it might be, a job for money, a job that they apply for, and a job that's not in your company or your friend's company. But a job that is typical of what a high schooler should have, such as scooping ice cream, bagging groceries, working at the water park, mowing lawns, washing cars, babysitting, dog walking, hosting at a restaurant. Kids can get jobs for pay when they're younger than 15 or whatever the cutoff is, if they're creative within their neighborhood, putting together a little camp. My 14-year-old, when he was 8 or 9, was obsessed with Star Wars, so deep that we had every book. We'd seen every movie multiple times. I don't even understand Star Wars, but he knew all of the subtleties of it. We had all the Legos. It was Justin, when he had an interest, we went deep. We had Rescue Heroes, we had Legos, we had Star Wars, we had the Harry Potter thing. Everything went deep. But this Star Wars went particularly deep. Some of you might relate. And after about 8 or 9, we outgrew that and had a lot of leftover Star Wars books and things, many of which I donated to my, unfortunate, that was just silly of me, because then my 5 and 6-year-olds started getting interested in Star Wars, and suddenly my 14-year-old, actually he was like probably 12 and a half at the time, got a resurgence because his younger brother was interested. And he went, oh my God, I loved all this stuff. Where are my old Legos? And where are my, all those books that we had? And I want to teach Ross all about Star Wars. And then they went into the basement and they watched all the movies back to back, and he explained it to him. And now my 6-year-old's obsessed, and it's bonding him to my 12-year-old. And so the last 2 years we've been really deep back into Star Wars again. Everything about Star Wars. So I was talking to my son, who was in 8th grade this last year, and I kind of threw out the idea that why doesn't, he's so into Star Wars, why doesn't he run a Star Wars camp for my son Ross and his friends? And he kind of looked at me and said, well, what do you mean a Star Wars camp? And I said, well, just if you love Star Wars, you could find a friend and you guys could put a camp together, and it could be kind of a summer job, and you could make some money, but you could just do something you love and know a lot about. So we had a camp. He had a camp. He worked harder than, I didn't really do much. I just hosted the space. But he had a morning camp for 5 to 7-year-olds that was Star Wars theme activities. They played red lightsaber, green lightsaber. They visited planets. They had planets tacked to each tree in the park, and they went and talked at the planets. The kids dressed up and had a parade on the last day of camp. They had Star Wars dot-to-dots and coloring sheets. They played Star Wars clips on his computer of scenes from movies. They brought out the Star Wars Legos. This was like Star Wars sports-related activities and crafts all week long. That was the morning. And then at 1 o'clock, so those kids left, and then at 1 o'clock, the 9, 10, and 11-year-olds, or 8, 9, and 10-year-olds came for the Star Wars movie seminar, which was episode 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. So we had to squeeze the 6 episodes into 5 days. And I just provided popcorn and sliced apples. And the kids watched the movies with my son holding the clicker, pausing, explaining ships, what's going on, who's related. And I so wanted to take the seminar. I really did. I wanted to know, I wanted to understand and be a good mom and be part of the dialogue. And I was so thankful to have 2.5 hours in my office with all the kids occupied downstairs that I went the first half of the first day, and then I played hooky the rest of the time. I just delivered popcorn and apples. But the Star Wars camp not only earned him some money, it earned him the experience of setting up the chairs every day, sending out the flyers, collecting the money, going to the t-ball games and passing out flyers, running the camp, and doing it with a friend who, that in itself created a really interesting dynamic of how they work together. And at the end of the week, he had done a job. There was no question about it. He had done a really hard job. And the kids loved it. The parents loved it. My son loved it. Everyone wants to know when they can sign up for next year. And I don't say this example, I usually give a different example, but today I wanted to give the Star Wars one because I just felt, not to say how great my son is, but to say any of these possibilities, if your kids have an interest, it's not hard to do. You just have to kind of bring it out of them and help dialogue with them and then let them run with it. And again, it shouldn't be your project, it should definitely be theirs. Bad ideas for high school jobs. Working as a doctor's office file person for your dad, working for your mom's friend, or clerking somewhere that just has the same last name as yours, whatever it would be. On the flip side of so finding a job also demonstrates to the colleges that your child understands the value of $1. That on Friday nights when they want to go to movies and pizza, that you don't just hand them a 20, but they know that took 4 hours to earn that $20 bill. And and the job can be unconventional, like the Star Wars camp, or it can be reporting to someone and and actually showing up somewhere and interviewing and whatnot. On the flip side, obviously volunteering and giving your time for free is equally important. We all know that. We know that as adults. We know that our kids can join any sort of organization, but volunteering should be fun. It should be something they enjoy, a good way to spend their time, not something they dread and hate. So volunteering has a student who loved basketball. He had practice 4 days a week. On the day he didn't have basketball, he would go into his driveway and shoot hoops. That's what he would do when he got home from school. And the little kids in the neighborhood would pop out. And I know a lot of these involve little kids and doing activities with younger kids, but it seems to be an easy kind of thing for these kids. But anyway, he said the little kids would come out and watch him shoot hoops, and he started showing them what he did. And he decided, what if I could get volunteer hours for sort of babysitting and doing a little basketball clinic with my neighbor kids every Wednesday. He talked to his school. They said as long as the moms signed off on it, moms were thrilled. They were busy cooking dinner or taking other kids to other activities. His volunteer work was teaching basketball to kids in his neighborhood throughout the school year. Pretty easy, pretty fun, pretty convenient. And in the summer, he did get smart, and he got a couple of the basketball guys together, and they did do a camp, and then they made some money. So volunteer work can turn into real work. It can be definitely anything that your kid is interested in career-wise, or just exploratory, can be a wonderful way to volunteer. I think there's great organizations like NCL, and there's also a boys version of that. The name escapes me. I know there's one up in Orange County, like in the Newport area. I don't know if there's one down here. I think groups where you volunteer with your child are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're very, noble, and it's great to be doing it together and modeling that. But I think it's also important for your child to have their own activity. That's their own volunteer experience, not you bringing them with you and encouraging them to do it with you. So churches, temples, Sunday schools are always looking for kids. Any local businesses are happy to have kind of some free volunteer labor, restocking in the back room, whatever it might be. And a lot of times these volunteer jobs can turn into paid jobs for the kids as well in the summers. So spending summers wisely. Summers, unfortunately, have become a time for kids to get a lot of the things done that they can't get done during the school year. Summers are evaluated by colleges. If your kid likes the beach, I tell them get a job at the Shake Shack, be a junior guard and, lifeguard, organize the beach cleanup. Don't just go to the beach to read your book and hang out with your friends and listen to music. You can do that for the recreation part, but find a way to use the beach as, as another experience for yourself. There's all sorts of amazing things your kids can do in the summer, especially if during the school year they haven't had time to do those things, whether it's visiting, doing your college visits, but even more than that, if you travel, try to make your travel educational if you can, not just recreational. It's kind of hard to do that in Hawaii unless you really study the petroglyphs and, try to, learn about the history of Hawaii while you're there, but that doesn't always happen. So obviously visiting museums, having immersion experiences with other families, learning about other cultures, practicing a new language, and thinking of summers as kind of a time to get things done that you don't always have time to do during the year. There's a wonderful website, which is also in your handout, called tipsontripsandcamps.com. I love that site because it's a free service that kids have given feedback on all the experiences that they've had. And any organization listed on tipsontripsandcamps.com has been screened and approved by real kids. So it's not just you pay to advertise here and so sign up for our particular program. It's this feedback program where students, when they're done, do these extensive evaluations and they continually update the site. And I just think it's a good place to start. You can, it's kind of like Naviance, you can select your interests, language, where you want to go, what it might be, and they have everything from academic programs to leadership to outward bound, to travel, to volunteer, whatever it might be. So that's kind of a good site that you can help guide your child to. Pursuing and finding your passion. Help your kids find that if they haven't already. They might have lots. Those are the well-rounded type kids that have lots of things they like. Then there's the kids we call the pointy kids who have that one interest that they just carry through everything that they do. I know a little boy who pointed at airplanes before he could talk. And the parents helped fuel that interest by visiting the airplane museums when they would go to the airport, and visiting the airport, and subscribing to airplane magazines and going to the airplane websites and really helping cultivate the child's love of planes. They built model planes, and yes, he's a pilot now, but was very young getting his pilot's license. I think did it right after high school. So finding whatever your kids' interests are and helping them pursue them, knowing that it's their experience, not your experience, even though they're our kids and we love them and value everything, and we're like the lion in their cub, knowing that it is their experience and their high school opportunity, and so it's not our role to kind of relive either what we didn't have in high school or what we wished we'd have in high school through them. So that vicarious experience is always good to remind ourselves that, okay, this is their experience, they're not us, and they're allowed to kind of have whatever their own ups and downs and interests and mistakes are. And finally, not sweating the small stuff. They're going to get bad grades. They're going to have peer pressure. They're going to feel disappointment that you can't protect them from. And trying to cool off and trying to say to yourself what my mom said when we were growing up, which now I get, which is this too shall pass. The time will pass. Hopefully your child will learn from those mistakes, as we all do, and come back kind of stronger the next time around. So I've run through the kind of basic high school rules with all of you. I want to kind of save a little bit of time for questions, and I know some of you even might need to leave because we've been here a while, but I want to kind of conclude with a few thoughts, sort of what the parent role is. To help your kids learn and think about themselves, their needs, their likes and dislikes, and how and where they can perform and feel the best and the happiest. Kind of a big pill to swallow. Encouraging when they're going through the process of applying to colleges later in high school, the research and discussion. Trying to, anytime you're planning a trip anywhere, stop by the college campus that is there. Whether or not it's a campus your child would ever even apply to doesn't matter. Just walking with your feet onto a college campus with your child and letting them see what it is they're doing all this hard work to try to get to is really important. I mean, go over to UC Irvine, it's right here. Go to almost any college and just take a tour and have them see, that kids are happy and enjoying this next stage of life. And if you have happy kids in high school, that's great too. I'm not saying they're all miserable, by the way. I know there's a lot of good things. I just get nervous with the kids that seem to peak in high school and think that high school is like the best 4 years of your life. I get concerned there, so I just know that there's lots of ups and downs, and they can be happy and sad on a daily basis. And finally, be aware of your own anxieties, your own prejudices. Focus on your child's abilities and strengths. Be realistic. Be supportive. Be non-judgmental. Kind of hard. So, I hope that I didn't flood you with too much information, and I hope that you feel like going away from today, you have some thoughts on ways that you can help your child navigate this process and be successful. And I really do not believe that success should be measured by A's, B's, and C's. It should be measured by kind of how individually they're each doing as who they are in the context of their school and as an individual. So the less, comparing and the less weight that we add to putting on that. They already know what A's, B's, and C's are and how they work. I do tell kids, anytime you get below an A, anytime you get a B or below, you should be seeing the teacher. You just should. You should just know what an A looks like. Whether you achieve it or not, you should know what you could have done differently or what you missed that might have given you the B. And the same goes for the C. What does a B look like, so that you kind of know the difference. So with that being said, are there any questions or comments or